Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to my guide to the Mount Ordeals trial on the extreme difficulty. This trial sees you face off against Rubicante, and the fight is mostly full of tricky visual tells. Fortunately for you, I have some quick tricks to solve them so you'll have your item level 625 weapon, or the mount if you're lucky, soon enough. Each mechanic is listed in the description with a timestamp, so please use those to skip around if need be. Before pulling Rubicante, set up a few positions as needed. First, set up clock spots. We just did the usual, tanks and healers on cardinals and DPS on intercardinals. I recommend using the lines on the arena for orientation for this, which is especially important in the later portions of the fight. You'll also want 2 light parties of 1 tank, 1 healer, and 2 DPS, preferably a melee and a range if your comp allows. You'll also want to break up into 4 pairs, each tank pair with a ranged and each healer with a melee. This is only for one specific mechanic, so I'll make mention of it later. If you have 3 melees, well, one of your tanks gets to suffer on a later mechanic. Also, assign a left and right tank, though this is only relevant for 2 attacks total. At the start of the fight, Rubicante will begin in his cloaked form. Here, Inferno is simply a basic raid wide, so handle it accordingly. After that Inferno, he will turn a bunch of the sky to fire and begin his fuse phase. When he begins casting Ordeal of Purgation, he will spawn several fuses on the ground. Simultaneously, he will mark rings along the arena and cause them to rotate over 1 fuse length. At the end of the cast, all players will be bound, the rings will rotate, and the fuses will travel outward until they hit one of the symbols along the edge. The triangle symbol will do a conal AoE from its location, and the boxes will do a half room AoE. Simply put, you have about 15 seconds to figure out where the fuse or fuses will end up and find a safe spot to dodge them all before you are bound. Fortunately, for almost all the patterns, there are quick tricks so you don't need to rack your brain too much. Also, if one player understands how to do this properly, hit him with the good old Danger Dorito marker. This person can single-handedly carry half of this fight's mechanics thanks to this. For the first one, there will be a single fuse. The center and outer ring will rotate, and yes, the outer ring rotating does rotate the symbols. If you are playing super safe, just identify where the fuse will end up and run all the way to the wall to the left or right of it. So long as you are on the opposite side of the room, the explosion will miss you regardless. Melees, however, won't be so appreciative of this, so it's recommended to use the first one to get some good practice at identifying the fuse patterns. The second set has 2 fuses, but this pattern is the easiest one. It will always be 2 box AoEs and always leave 1/4 of the room open. Literally just run to the opposite side of the room as the 2 fuses in the center, and you will always be safe here. After that, the flames will subside. Rubicante will use Shattering Heat as a tank buster, but it just hits the tank for high damage. No vulns, no tank swap required at all. Tanks, by the way, expect to be very bored this fight, as a forewarning. After the tank buster, split into your light parties and stand on the north and south side of the room. Rotating AoEs will begin appearing, and Rubicante will make the very center of the arena on fire. Just rotate in your light parties while he does 2 of 3 potential AoE mechanics. If you see plain old markers over everyone's head, just means spread out, so get away from each other. A split damage AoE on each healer means just stack up on each side, and the enumeration circles just means you need to pair up. They either target all the DPS or all the tanks and healers, so just pair up a DPS with either a tank or a healer. It's nice to have 1 melee and 1 range in each light party here just for the space, but it's hardly necessary. This also isn't what I was having you pair up for earlier, so bear that in mind. Between the first and second of whichever 2 attacks he uses, there's going to be a line AoE through the middle of the room, but just don't get hit by it. After the second AoE mechanic, Rubicante will begin casting Radial Flagration. This does a conal AoE on every player, so we just all get to our clock spots. We did this true north as well, so mark a flag on your mini-map so if you get lost easily, you can find where you need to go. Or just put down markers as we did and remember which is yours. After another Inferno will be more fuses, a bit trickier than last time. The first set will have 2 fuses and only triangle symbols. The easiest trick here is to just walk between the 2 fuses from the center directly next to one of the triangle symbols that the fuses will hit at the end. This ensures that no matter the pattern, you will be safe. Melee at max will be a little bit close to being hit, but you can still max melee here safely. The second set here is 2 boxes again, but this time only 1/8 of the arena will be safe. One box AoE will always have a straight line towards it from the center, while the other will have a zigzag fuse in the middle ring. There are a couple of easy tricks here. I always look at the hard to find box, the one connected to the zigzag fuse, and get opposite of that first. Then I just look for the remaining fuse. It'll either be to your back left or your back right. If it's to your back left, then go all the way to the right. If it's to your back right, then go all the way to the left. You could also do it in reverse. You can find the easy straight line fuse box first, and then go opposite of it. Then, you actually follow the rotation of the middle ring. So if it's clockwise, go to your left. If it's counterclockwise, go to your right. Achieves the same thing, so whichever is easier for you to process, that should help you out. Once this is done, Rubicante will become untargetable and go into his add phase. This is 5 small flame scent and 1 greater flame scent. Focus down the greater flame scent first, as it will spam Ghastly Torch. This is a room-wide AoE that will apply a stacking dot, so ideally, it's dead by the second or third torch. The remaining flame scent all do different mechanics. Shortly into the phase, the middle top small flame scent will do Ghastly Flame, which just drops a ton of dodgeable AoEs on the ground. Right after that, the southeast and southwest flame scents will each tether a DPS. This will do a large conal AoE when it expires, so have each of these DPS just aim those tethers and cones away from the group. Finally, the northeast and northwest flame scent will do tank buster tethers. Have each tank grab a tether and bring it away from the party. You can use that left-right designation we did at the start for this, plus one more thing later. So kill order is greater flame scent, south flame scent, tank flame scents, that last middle one that just does the ground AoEs. With this order, you'll get 1 set of each mechanic and likely kill them before you can see a second set. You must kill them all before Rubicante's gauge fills up, or his Blazing Rapture attack will kill everyone. Be sure to mitigate this and watch the dot effect on the ground that he places while he's casting it. It could strip away your shields a little bit. With this, we are on to phase 2. Shortly into the phase, Rubicante will transform into his Uncloaked form and do a whole bunch of new attacks, even switching up one from the original phase. His first attack is Flamespire Brand. This will mark players with 2 different sets of debuffs that go off when they expire. First, 4 players will get proximity AoEs and 1 player will get a stack marker debuff. These are role based, so either all 4 DPS get the proximity or the tanks and healers do. This means one role is doing the proximity while the other handles that stack damage. A few seconds after the first debuffs go off, all players will get spread AoEs, which do give magic vulns. So if you overlap, you're not gonna make it. I'll give you some positions to help eliminate overlap here. While your debuffs are ticking down, Rubicante uses Flame Rake to do 4 line AoEs from the center of the room. After these line AoEs go off, they continue to gradually splash outward, doing 3 back-to-back AoEs with different patterns. The proximities and stack debuffs go off on the second AoE ground hit, and the spread goes off just as the last one goes off, maybe a second later. So editing this in, I'm about to say in the next voice line, so that's what we did, and that is an utter lie. We actually just hypermitted everything in this phase, maximum amount of shields, everything we could throw into it, and just made sure that we all avoided each other for the spread at the end. With all the shields and everything, the person was able to eat the split damage marker alone, and in one clear actually split it with 2 people and the other person survived. So this is a viable way to do it, but I am going to detail with diagrams the exact way you can do it without using hyper mitigation. So here's what we did. The stack marker roll goes north and stands between north and northeast, between our A and 1 marker. The other roll should have 2 players go between west and southwest, and the remaining 2 between east and southeast. Flame Rake will spin and either start by aiming at the cardinals or intercardinals, so be sure to inch over to whichever will be safe once the spin stops. The stack marker group should move into the center after the first AoE goes off. Not all the way in, just inch in so you make sure that you're safe, before then spreading around that side of the room after the split damage AoE goes off. Melees and tanks, you can just step to the left and right of each other, while healers and ranged back off and also go left and right. For the proximity AoEs, have the melee step barely into the center safe square, while the ranged take the outer safe areas as you see me doing here. Then have the melee stand still and the ranged just take a slight step in to avoid that third AoE. It should look something like these diagrams for each step of the phase. I recommend throwing on some big shields here, though so long as no one overlaps and everyone's in that stack, the damage here should be manageable. If you want, have a healer take the very center of the room for easier healing as well. Now get your heals in quickly because coming up is a barrage of damage on every player. First up is Inferno. Now in Rubicante's Uncloaked form, this is instead a spread damage AoE on each player, so have everyone go to their marker/clock spots. It also applies a dot to every player, so I highly advise saving Raid Mitt for this to bring down the dot damage, while you use shields for the mechanic before it. Quickly have everyone step in for some quick healing before they go back to their clock spots. After recentering, Rubicante will either cast Scalding Signal or Scalding Ring. Scalding Signal is a point-blank AoE, while Scalding Ring is a donut AoE. These are immediately followed up by Scalding Fleet, doing a line AoE at every player. Make sure to stand right on the line where your clock spot is and do the point blank or donut AoE. Immediately after this, he'll use Sweeping Immolation. Not only will the clones he summoned with Scalding Fleet rush back in the same directions the players aim them, hence the emphasis on using those lines on the arena floor, Rubicante will also do a half-room AoE in the direction he is facing. Finally, he will hit the raid with either an 8-player stack hit or spread AoEs again. Which is done is determined by the symbol next to his cloak wing. If it's one giant circle, it's a single stack marker for all 8 players. If it's several small circles, it's a spread on every player. So the arena should look like this during this mechanic relative to the direction he is facing, so we'll need to use this space for either AoE pattern. If it's a stack marker, just stand behind him and then slightly off to the left or right. I would prefer left, just to make sure everyone gets hit by the stack. If it's spread, you'll want 2 players in each of these pizza slices that has been separated by the clone AoEs fleeting back. Remember those pairings we set at the start? Yup. Tanks and ranged get the outer 2 pizza slices, while melees and healers get the inner 2. The spread AoEs are quite big, so players that are in don't go too far into the hitbox or you'll actually hit each other anyway. And he ain't done yet. Next is Dualfire, which will do a conal tank buster on the top 2 aggro targets. Make sure both your tanks have aggro here, put one northwest, one northeast, and the party can go south, and you should be okay. Now you get a bit of a break finally. Rubicante will put his cloak back on and do some more fuses. The first set will be a single fuse, with the inner and middle rings rotating. This one's just use your eyeballs and dodge whichever symbol it's going to. The second set will always end with 1 box and 1 triangle symbol. I just recommend finding the fuse that goes to the box, get opposite of it, and then look at whether the other fuse is to the left or right of that fuse. If it's to the right, then run right all the way to the wall. If it's to the left, then run left all the way to the wall. That's at least my mental shortcut for it. If your DPS is good, you might actually kill him right here, but for PF, expect one last new mechanic, Flamespire Claw. This will mark all 8 players with a numbered marker, indicating the order you will be hit. When he calls your number, he will perform a conal AoE in your direction, going through each player one at a time until he's done it 8 times. At the same time, he places 2 Flamespire tethers on the rest of the party. These will gradually stack a debuff on any player they are on. If Flamespire reaches 5 stacks, it will explode, and that's not good. The dance here is pretty simple. Players baiting cleaves from the boss should go northwest and northeast, while the rest of the party handles the tethers to the south. We set odds northwest and evens northeast. So 1 and 2 would start northwest and northeast respectively. Feel free to put 1 and 2 markers here when you're setting up at the start of the fight. I know we didn't, but feel free to do it. Once 1 gets hit, then 3 runs to where 1 was standing and waits for their cleave. When 2 gets cleaved, 4 will go take their spot, and so on and so forth until you get through all 8 numbers. As for the tethers, players with 7 and 8 should stand in front of the rest of the party to the south and hold the tethers first. As players get hit by their cleaves, they should run in and grab the tethers off of whoever has them. So once 1 and 2 do their cleaves, immediately run in and grab the tethers off 7 and 8. Then 3 and 4 will grab off 1 and 2, and then 5 and 6 off 3 and 4. It's just a basic merry-go-round that takes a bit of practice to get into the rhythm of, but otherwise isn't too bad. After this, the fight is on repeat. You'll get another Cloaked Inferno, followed up by Scalding Signal or Ring, the Fleet, the half-room AoE, plus the Stacker Spread like last time. That's the big healing phase, so be prepared for that again. After another Dualfire, he'll go back to Cloaked mode and do more fuses. The first set for us was double triangle pattern, followed by the double box pattern again. Right after this is the Enrage, with a total fight time of roughly 11 minutes. It depends on how long or short your ad phase was. And that's going to be a wrap for my guide to Rubicante on the extreme difficulty. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and best of luck on your weapons and mounts out there. Maybe a crafting material or two. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one, and until then, take care.